Hey, Chad, welcome to the His and Her Money Show.
Hey, Chad.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thank y'all for having me. I've been looking forward to it.
We're super glad to have you because, you have some great insight on a topic that a lot of people need to know about, self included. And we know that when it comes to building wealth, there are only a few ways, true ways, legitimate ways that you can do that. And one of those big areas is real estate. And you have quite a journey when it comes to real estate investment. You kind of jumped in with both feet and learned a lot along the way. So we were glad that you were able to make some time to come and share your insight with us and our audience today. So for those who are unfamiliar with you and the work that you do and your insight, can you take a moment to introduce yourself to everyone and let them know what you're all about?
Sure. So about 16 years ago, I'm 38 years old. So I got started kind of in the entrepreneurship journey. But before that, I was in college and I played football. And so I was a middle linebacker, had like the big neck and, actually like looked like I could lift something. Like I'm a little skinny guy now. But when I graduated from college, it's kind of like, all right, NFL didn't work out. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And luckily I had some family members who had some rental properties. And so I was kind of going the biology, pre-med kind of route. And I said, you know what, I'm just going to see what I can do, see if I can kind of figure out a way to make a little bit of money just doing real estate. And so right after college, I started doing something in the real estate lingo, they call it like bird dogging. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, where basically I would go like sniff out deals for other people. I had no money. Like I was just graduating from college. And I was fortunate enough to have any student debt. But I just went out and I would just like walk around neighborhoods looking for houses that had grass growing up, or looking for houses that were in foreclosure, maybe that somebody wanted to sell them, or looking for a landlord who just, to kind of let his or her house run down. And so I would go find them, but I didn't have the money to buy them. And so I would kind of work with other investors and I would make a little fee just for kind of hustling and helping them find deals. But it was a really good way to learn the business because I didn't have to raise the money. I didn't have to learn how to do remodels and all this other stuff that I had no clue what I was doing, but I learned how to do one little slice of the business, which is finding good deals at a good price. And then I was able to build on that as I grew. And I decided to keep doing it from there and learned how to flip houses and buy some rentals eventually. But that was how I got started.
So, but what made you even pursue real estate? Because number one, you weren't just... You had a chance to get to the NFL. You were playing for a major university, Clemson University, starting middle linebacker, and you had some prospects, potential to possibly go to NFL. That didn't work out. But then you were also handling yourself in the classroom, biology, pre-med. You could have went the medical route. So how did you go from NFL prospect, pre-med, to real estate investor in the first place? What made you even give it a shot?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've had to look back and figure out why I did that, but I think I did it because I had this little itch for some flexibility and freedom. And I'd played football, and you go to these big meetings, and you're always kind of, it's almost like the military. They got your schedule, and and I was like, you know what, I just want to see if I could do something like entrepreneurship. It's always attracted me because it was you make your own schedule, it's flexible. I mean, you have to work harder than a job sometimes. Y'all know that, but I was really there was a allure. It kind of was like sports to me, where it was a big challenge and you could go for it, and it was just like this big mountain that I had to conquer. So I think it was part of that, just the challenge of it, the flexibility, the freedom. Just to do your own thing. And so I just felt fortunate enough too. Nobody starts from, some people start from scratch, big in debt. And I know y'all help people get out of debt, which is awesome. I was fortunate enough to have some gifts given to me. And I just felt like, I need to take advantage of those gifts and see if I can make a run at it. So I think that was the main motivation.
Now, you've been doing this for a while now. Why do you encourage people, teach people? Why is real estate a solid way for long-term wealth building?
I go to a Warren Buffett quote. Like Warren Buffett, smart investor, but probably the best investor of all time. And he always advises people, like one of his number one things he looks at when he invests is he wants to invest in something that's simple and understandable. And I feel like real estate, like we all live, everybody's got to live somewhere. We've all lived in an apartment or a house. And so we're sort of familiar with why people choose to live in a place or not. We all want to live in a neighborhood that is safe, and we all want to have something that's affordable. And so like if you've been a tenant or you've bought a house yourself, you kind of know what drives real estate and what makes it a good or bad. And so I think for that reason, we can all go intuitively kind of figure out, all right, that's a neighborhood that might have a chance to do something good long run. And the numbers and the math is not like super complicated. Here's the rent, here's your expenses, and let's just make sure I have enough rent left over to pay my mortgage and have a little bit of cash flow. And so like that's kind of in a nutshell what real estate's all about. I mean, you can get more complicated with it, but because it's simple and understandable, because it's local, we can go and ride a neighborhood and look for properties. I think everybody is more approachable for all of us. It's not some kind of pie in the sky thing on Wall Street. It's just something we can do like right now. That's why I got started in it. And I also found out that my favorite way of investing in real estate is by doing something with your residence to make sure your residence like turns into a good investment. And for example, there's this, when I first bought when I was renting for a while, and I lived with my business partner, his spare bedroom for a while when I first started. But eventually I said, I want to get my own house. And so, but instead of going out and buying this big old house with a white picket fence, I was still young, I didn't have kids, didn't have a family. I went and bought a fourplex building. So like, had 4 front doors, 4 different apartments, and with the same down payment, the same thing I could have bought on a house. And I moved into 1 unit, and then I rented out the other 3 units. And so the rough numbers were like this. I had $1,200 coming in from my other 3 units, and my mortgage payment, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance was about $1,150. So I was living for $50. I was positive $50 a month living in my first home. And I had friends who were in college who had gone and put $40,000 down on a big old house and had a $1,200 mortgage payment, So it was like I was about $2,400 or, whatever that math comes out ahead of all my friends. And so I could use that money to invest, to pay down debt if I needed to. And so I think that for real estate, for that reason, you can do it a little bit, just like making sure your house is a smart investment, or you can go big, you can go buy rental properties and do all that. So there's a lot of flexibility to make it work.
Now, I want to give context for everybody so they know what you know and that you know it well, okay? Talk about your personal portfolio. How many properties are you currently owner of?
Right. So I have a business partner. So the two of us together have 90 units. So that's like some of those are apartments. So like a 12-plex building has 12 units in it. But, we've over the last 16 years, we've gone from that, one little house that we flipped and that was all we had to having 90 units. And so but I think the most important thing to know about that was it's kind of like I've got the scars to prove it. I did a lot of stupid stuff too. And I think we all kind of, I don't know about everybody, but I learned that way by, you touch the fire, you do something stupid. A lot of it had to do with just getting too aggressive and buying too many properties. But I have enough mistakes to know in a 16-year period, I've just made a ton of mistakes and done enough good things that in the end, we've got 90 units that produce enough cash flow to pay for our lifestyle. I don't have to go work a job, and I don't have to flip houses anymore. I don't have, I just have this rental income coming in, and that's been the amazing thing. It's just, when you have your time free and income's coming in, it's like, what do you want to do now? It's like being in college again and saying, all right, what's the next step? What do I want to do with my life?
So let's talk about, what are the first steps? Maybe there's someone that's listening and real estate really seems intimidating. I know we got into it.
That's what I was going to say. We could talk about some scars too, Chad.
So much so that it really left a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
because we went similar to you, we had an issue during the recession. Mm-hmm. That was our first time delving into investment real estate.
Yeah.
And we bought a house, fixed it, put it back on the market just when it crashed.
Just when it crashed. And I also think that a lot of my fears as well too comes in from I didn't want to rent. I didn't want to have somebody else come into my property and tear it up or mess it up. And it was like, man, so talk about somebody that's just starting. Maybe they want to get into real estate. Maybe they don't know how. What should be the best approach to take when starting?
Yeah, I mean, my personal bias is kind of like what I did, where if you could turn your residence somehow into an investment, it kind of is a baby step, a first step. I mean, there's no way better. And here, let me give you a couple ways that I think are awesome that your listeners could kind of just take and maybe run with. One is like my example that I gave you, where if you move into some kind of house or a duplex or a quadruplex or a house with a basement apartment or something where it could produce a little bit of income from your residence right off the bat. Now, there's some downsides to it. You got tenants living next to you, so if that's not your thing. But I guess my point is, like, if you got to live somewhere, and instead of taking that money and kind of putting it in a house that's going to be a sinkhole, because a house can be a sinkhole if you just, sometimes you go too big, too much, the down market or whatever. But you go in this house and you can rent out the basement, for example, and get an extra $600 a month by renting your basement out. You're learning the business. It's not that intimidating because you got one tenant, you got one property, and you can learn the landlording business without having to get big and go crazy. And we all learn by doing. And so by having that little unit right next door to you, you'll learn you can go to Bigger Pockets, where I wrote this book through, and kind of get educated. And so I think taking that kind of baby step with a house hack, or that's called a house hack, by the way. I don't know if I said that earlier. In the real estate nerd world, we call hacking your housing, not like somebody hacking the computer or something, but figuring out a way to reduce your mortgage payment and make your housing into an investment instead of something that's draining your money out. So I think that would be the number one way. And if somebody said, you know what, I'm in my 30s or 40s or 50s and I'm not living next door to my tenant, that's just not going to happen. Sort of a variation of that is just don't move into the biggest house you can buy. Move into an affordable house, make it nice, get a mortgage or pay cash for it, whatever you're going to do. But get a house that's reasonable, fix it up a little bit. And after a couple of years, you can then move out and move to another house and then keep that house as a rental property after you move out. So it's a really approachable way. You're not having to go big and go crazy with it. You got to live somewhere, but both of those situations will kind of get you started and get very slowly while you learn the business. And if you like it, you can get bigger. You can do even more than that.
What if you're in a situation where maybe your family size doesn't kind of allow for a house hack situation? You're in a single family home yourself that is just the right size for the number of people in your family. You don't have the basement, or you're not in a multi-unit situation, but right. You realize that you want to use real estate investing as a way to build wealth for your family. Mm-hmm. How do you figure out, because over your career, you've done lots of things. You talked about how you started off wholesaling, you've done some flipping. Now you're more of a buy and hold type of investor with so many things out there. I even read some stuff where people are buying, or not even buying, but renting properties to then sub-rent them through Airbnb. I mean, there's just so many different ways to do it. How do you figure out which method is the right one that you should pursue?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It can be overwhelming, when you first start looking into anything, but particularly with real estate, because it's all right, you got this strategy, that strategy, that strategy. And I think the first question I would ask myself is where are you in the whole wealth building journey? And we've all been everybody's been there. So if you're just starting and you're still in debt and you're just kind of concentrating on paying debt off or something and get an emergency fund, that's fine. We've all been there. But that's not the stage to go out and buy a rental property or go get a bunch of leverage on a rental property. To me, you don't need to, real estate's when you're going to start buying rental properties and flipping houses, you need to have a little bit more of a foundation under you. And so when I first started, when I did the bird dogging and wholesaling, that was really just a job. I wasn't really investing in real estate. It was Walmart buys and sells products. I was just buying and selling houses instead. And so if you find yourself in that situation, I think the best thing you could do is just save money. Just pay off your personal debts, save money, follow your advice, watch the His and Her Money show. I mean, all that stuff is going to lead you to having a foundation. And then if you're in a house and you have a big family and you can't do a house hack or something, at some point start looking in your neighborhood. I like to start local if you can. Some markets are really high priced and it's kind of difficult to buy, but if you can start looking in your neighborhood, and as you take a walk, if you walk the dog, if you push your kids in the stroller, this used to be our habit, is we would just look for houses that might be an opportunity or places that might be an opportunity and start studying your neighborhood, because you'll be amazed if you every weekend make a habit out of just walking around your neighborhood or driving around your neighborhood. There are little opportunities right under your eyes that you don't pay attention to. And they might be, like I mentioned earlier, a house with grass grown up that's really high. It might be somebody has to move and you're talking to a neighbor and it's just an opportunity to help them out by buying the house from them and they got to move quickly. And so if you do that, if you start being the person who like knows your neighborhood and knows real estate values really well, you could either buy it yourself if you have enough money, or you could go to like somebody like me in your town and find a way to partner with them, or pass that deal on to them and make a little fee for it, a wholesale fee or something. And so, but it all starts with like getting knowledgeable about the market itself. So whatever you do, I think it's a really good place to start.
I want to ask this question too. Go back to your first scenario, the house sack. So should that person also let their neighbors know that they're the landlord, like they're the owners of this home, or should they really keep that discreet?
I personally like to tell them, and I've heard some landlords, I'm not a landlord. They try to, but it's just not, it's not honest first of all. And I found that there's kind of an attitude between landlords and tenants that's not positive in a lot of cases. It's like, hey, that's the landlord and they're not out to help me, and the tenant vice versa. And so if possible, I found it to be the opposite case. Tenants are awesome people. Like they're helping you build wealth. Your job and your service to them is to provide a safe house that's clean, and you're the one taking the risk of if the roof leaks, you're going to fix it for them. And so you're helping them out. And in the best case scenarios, it's not a contentious relationship. It's like, hey, we're serving each other and helping each other. And so like when I was in a house hack, they all knew me. They knew I owned the building. And there were very few situations like people were afraid of, like where they knocked on my door at 1 o'clock in the morning. Like it didn't happen that often. You can tell them like, all right, here's an emergency. If we start getting water coming out of the sink in the kitchen, here's what you do. Here's a valve that you turn off, and then we'll solve it in the morning. Something like that. You sort of educate them a little bit. And in a worst case scenario, yeah, maybe you have to call a plumber every once in a while. But in my entire time of landlording, there's been very few like super, super emergency situations like that.
How do you find good tenants?
So it starts with the property, actually. There's good books like Brandon Turner on Bigger Pockets wrote a book on managing properties and awesome systems and processes. But really, it starts with just getting a property where the type of tenant that you want to attract wants to live, and then fixing it up in a way that good quality tenants who can pay their bills will actually want to live there. And so I think that goes back to the service of what you do as a real estate investor. If you treat that house like something that you would want to live in, and it doesn't mean you're going to make it the Taj Mahal, make it granite countertops and all that, but treat it nicely, make it clean, make it safe. When things break, fix them quickly. If you do that, I think the tenants, when they start coming to look at the house, like you put it on for example, you put it on Zillow and you put a sign out there or something, they'll come to the house and they'll recognize, wow, this landlord like actually takes care of the property. This isn't like a slummy property. And so the good tenants that you want who have taken care of their business financially are going to want to rent from you, and they're going to run away. The bad ones, the ones who aren't taking care of their business financially, are going to go to those slummy properties because they know that landlord doesn't care about the property, and they might let them get by with not paying their rent. So it's really interesting how that works, that the good attracts good, and the other way around.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I have an uncle, I believe the uncle I'm speaking of. He has a property, and my goodness, he must have, this tenant probably has been in the home for, I would say, 15, 20 years.
Wow.
And she keeps the place so clean that he wants to basically do whatever she asks. Like if she'll see a new lighting fixture that she wants done, no questions asked. He'll buy it, he'll get it installed. Like if she wants new paint, he'll paint, because she's that good of a tenant that he also reciprocates that I appreciate you. And because you take such good care of my property, I want to make this beautiful. So you do want to stay.
That's right. Yeah. It's amazing how that works, right?
Yeah.
You help me, I help you.
Right.
I mean, so I found that to be the case, and I've observed both sides of that. People who don't do that, people who do, and it's like any business. Like it's a people business. You're here to serve people. If you treat them right, people are going to treat you right. And you'll have some bad apples. Like I've had a couple that we just didn't get along, and we had to file an eviction, and things didn't work. But a large majority of the cases, even when things go bad, somebody loses their job. If like we try to help each other out, like all right, look, things are bad. I got a mortgage to pay. Like I can't let you live there rent free. But we had a situation one time. It was really probably one of the saddest situations where a guy didn't have any family. He was immigrant, and we had to basically help him find a home to move to because he lost his job and had health issues. And I mean, it's tough. But even in that worst situation, like you can kind of talk to them and go show up and knock on the door. Hey, let's sit down and talk about this. And what if we hired a moving van for you? I'm going to, handyman that always comes over to fix stuff. He's going to come over and help you. I'll be there too. We'll all come over and help you get your furniture, take it to Salvation Army or help you sell it, find a place for you. And we called around to different shelters and found it. So even then, like when things get really bad, you can like make it a little bit better just by treating people the same way you'd want to be treated.
Love reading, but wish you had more time to get into your favorite books? What if you could use the time you already have and listen to the books you already love? Well, now you can with Audible. With Audible books, you can be inspired, entertained, and educated anywhere, anytime. Choose from the bestsellers in self-development, business, nonfiction, and more. So what are you waiting for? Your first 30 days are free. Visit hisandhermoney.com/audible to get started today. That's hisandhermoney.com/audible.
One of the unique approaches in your new book is that you give a blueprint for various scenarios. So if you want to be the type of real estate investor that buys in cash, you lay out a blueprint. If you want to be the type of real estate investor that use leverage, you show a blueprint there which you can start that way, but you have a debt snowball formula that eventually pays them all off. So that's the great debate here because we are completely debt free, Chad. I mean, there's nothing. We don't even owe on our mortgage. So mathematically, we're both intelligent in the sense of understanding financial principles. We're good at math. So we know the calculations say that, you can build a portfolio faster if you use leverage the right way and don't over leverage yourself. So this is a conversation that we've had. We've gone back and forth, teeter and time. We're more leaning towards the 100% cash route. But like I said, we know the math of it. We know that we could build our portfolio faster with leverage, but just the emotional thought of having any type of mortgage kind of is like, ugh. Yeah. So help us. You're known online as Coach Carson. So talk to us. What's your advice to people like us who are going back and forth in their mind? Should I use a leveraged approach or should I just go the 100% cash approach?
Yeah, this is a debate. Like if you go on Bigger Pockets in the forums, this is the way to like drop a bomb in a conversation. Like people will start going back and forth. You're wrong, and it's funny. It's funny to watch. But my answer is I'm going to tell you a story first, a sports story, because that's how I understand stuff. And then I'll get into some numbers. There's a coach, Vince Lombardi, was a football coach that people might recognize. He was like an old like Hall of Fame football coach for the Green Bay Packers. And from what I read of him, he had a super simple like play calling offense. And so like nothing complicated at all. From what I understand, he ran a sweep left, like, which is, and if you don't know football, that just means you like toss the ball to the running back and he runs that way. And then he run a sweep right. That was his second play. And he would just run to the right, like same play. And his players would practice that over and over and over until they got sick of it. And then they just went and won championships every single year. And so I guess my equation back in finance and real estate is like, I know some real estate investors who did the sweep left and sweep right, meaning they just paid cash for properties. It was not as sexy. It was not as like, debt filled, and they didn't get rich as fast. But you know what? They still have their wealth. When you run the math and you look at it, and I did that in the book, I showed examples of case studies. Maybe you get leverage and maybe you get there 2 or 3 years faster. Maybe you get an extra $1,000 of income. But if you just want to know you're going to get there, like that debt-free path is solid. It's not the route I took myself, actually. I started with leverage and probably wish I would have learned a little bit more about alternative routes when I first started. But for my friends in real estate who just say, I'm just going to save up money and pay cash for properties, it's a super solid, super simple plan. The numbers are pretty, you just look at it, say, all right, I'm going to buy this property. And let's say I pay $100,000 cash. It's going to take me a while to save that money. Maybe I got to sell some stuff, but I'm going to wait until I got $100,000. And then you go buy a rental property. And let's say the property rents for $1,000. And after all your expenses are paid, taxes, insurance, maintenance, vacancy, you have $500 left over every month. So there you go, simple math. And how much is that per year? That's 500 times 12, about $6,000 a year. And so it's just like, all right, I invested $100,000. I got 6,000 back every year. I save that money, I reinvest it, and I save it up until I can do it again. And then you just keep, it's like a snowball. And so that is a super solid plan. And my message is for y'all, like if y'all are on that and that's what you're comfortable with, the fact that you're comfortable with it and you can apply it will make it'll work. I mean, you might talk to some real estate investors who swear by debt and say that's the only way. Why would you invest in real estate without debt? And it's not the case that you can't do it without it. You can do either way. And I think the risk of going too much debt is that I had a lot of friends, investors in 2007 and 8 who crashed and burned. And the number one way that people have gone out of business in real estate is not making their mortgage payment, without a doubt. Like that is the number one way I've seen. I can count them on my hand, the people who went out of business. And I know the stress that I had in 2007 and 8 was exactly that. All right, what am I going to do if I can't make my mortgage payment? And so that to me is an argument. Like if you want to go low risk, it's like Vince Lombardi. You're going to just run the sweep left, sweep right, make your wins, and you can get exactly where you want to go, and just doing that.
So this sounds great and all. When is the right time to purchase? I mean, we know what happened back in 2007, 2008.
Oh, we know all too well.
And we're also hearing now that there's talk of this could be happening again. You know what I mean? So when is really the right time to purchase or to buy?
Yeah, so nobody knows. That's the short answer. It does look like both in the stock market, where 2018, the valuations look higher, and where there's no doubt real estate goes up and down. It goes in cycles, and we are in an up cycle in general in the United States, Canada as well. And so, but when do we get the top? Nobody really knows that. But here's my approach. Like my approach is more of a long-term buy and hold type. If you're a long-term buy and hold investor, and we go back to that example I just had of a $100,000 purchase and it makes $6,000 a year. What if that $100,000 purchase went down to $80,000? Why you bought and hold it? But what if you still made $6,000 a year? What would that do to your plans if your plans were to save $6,000 a year and reinvest it? Like would the whole world come crashing in if it went down? And so like that. So if you're a long-term thinker and you think, this is a 10, 15-year plan and this is my retirement plan and I'm going to and you focus on income and not just always looking at the price. And that's the beautiful thing about real estate is like it does go up and down, and you can make a lot of money when it goes up. I've made a lot of money doing that too, but it's the income on the property is the first thing I always focus on. And so my message to people right now as the market goes up is tempting to kind of get up in that race of like, I want to buy and sell and I want to let it go up, and you want to speculate, buy income, focus. And if your area, if you can't buy good income, you might need to go to another area. You might need to buy out of state and do something different. And that's people like in San Francisco and people like New York City. That's sometimes when the market gets hot, that's what they have to do. They have to go and buy properties in South Carolina. Or I've got a friend in the military. He's in Korea right now. He's going to retire in a year or two. And he owns 20 properties in Montgomery, Alabama. And he's paid cash for them, so
love his story.
Yeah, he was on the show.
Yeah, we interviewed
Rich.
him. We'll
you had Rich on there. Awesome.
Yeah, in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll have that episode linked in the show notes. Now, you are a family man, and the premise of your new book is that real estate investment can get you to financial independence. How do you tie those two together? Give us the overarching thought there.
Yeah, so financial independence, if you look at it really simply, is you just work it backwards and say, at some point, I want my investments to pay for my lifestyle instead of me working a job and having to do that. And you can still work a job. Like almost everybody I know who got financial independence, still has jobs and projects. Like, we can't stop because we love doing what we do. But it's a beautiful thing when you finally get to the point where your investments pay for your lifestyle and you don't have to go into a job if you don't want to. It changes the whole dynamic of work. And so that's what financial independence is. And with real estate, you kind of work it backwards. And again, you can use simple math. Let's say, for example, and actually the numbers, when I did a survey of 850 people when I wrote this book, and I asked them this question. I said, what kind of expenses would you need to cover for you to be financially independent? And would y'all have a guess at what the number, it was a range, but what do y'all think the number was that most people across the country
monthly
said?
The monthly?
You guess first. And then
annual. It was actually annual. So what?
Annual. I would probably say between 50 and 60,000.
I was going to say 50.
you guys know your numbers. It was 50 to 75,000 was the range.
Okay.
And so, I mean, I throw that number out there because if you do the math, like, you know, you could probably own, if you need to have 100% of your money coming from rental properties, you could probably have 10 properties, 12 properties that were paid off free and clear. And they could pay for almost everybody's lifestyle if you just needed 50, 60,000 a year. And so really it's kind of like that slow race. Like, all right, I got to get one property, and it always starts with one. You got to do that conservatively and make sure you don't mess it up. And you get that first one, and then you save your money, and you do a second one, and you save your money, and it sort of starts snowballing after 3 or 4. It takes a lot of time on those first couple, but that's basically the plan. There's some different variations. Like I compare it to climbing a mountain. You know, the peak of the mountain is financial independence. You start at the bottom where you don't have much wealth, and you got to figure out what route you're going to go up the mountain. And so the routes are just different real estate plans. It's the all cash plan, like you guys would probably like, or the debt snowball plan, where you get some mortgages on properties and then you pay them off over the next 10 years. Or you could do the trade up plan, which is another whole thing if you wanted to use a lot of leverage and kind of be more entrepreneurial and use some more advanced strategies. But we're all going to end up hopefully at the top of the mountain. And so the thing I love about rental properties and real estate is, as opposed to like just buying a passive index fund or something, which is great. I love index funds. You sort of have more control over the process. Like you're the one who's going to go buy that property. You're the one who's got to choose a good tenant or have a manager to choose a good tenant. And so you're much more in control of that climb. And I've seen people do it in 10 years, 15 years. You know, these numbers I'm seeing on your show, like these $60,000 and $100,000. If you can do that, you can save money and then build wealth with real estate. You've already done the harder thing, paying off all the debt. You know, doing this next step is just continuing the journey. And so that's what I love about it.
You are speaking your life. I want everybody to understand, you're not talking from theory. You are a real estate investor. You had a 16-year career, and you're financially independent. So much so that you and your entire family just spent 17 months in Ecuador. You just said, you know what? Let's just pause. Let's just take a break on life. Yep. And let's leave the country. Talk to us about how, you and your wife came to that decision, why you came to that decision, and what you learned as a result.
Yeah, so when I first met my wife, she happens to be a Spanish teacher, and she teaches foreign language, and she always studied abroad. And I did that a little bit in college, but not as much as I'd like because of football. And the very first conversation, we were like, hey, we want to go like travel and do this. So it was always sort of in the back of our mind that like, that's our why, like that really is cool. And so we did it before we had kids. We went on a 4-month trip in 2009 where we just went to South America, got our backpacks, and I learned how to speak Spanish in Peru, and we stayed with families and just sort of wandered around, and we just got such a good taste of it. We're like, all right, we got to do this again. But we had kids, and so we sort of settled down a little bit and said, all right, once one of them's 3, I think we can take them abroad again. And just, we had a lot of reasons, but it was kind of fun for us to think about. We wanted them to see other cultures. We wanted them to learn another language, Spanish in particular, in our case. And so we sort of just like threw a dart at a map. So in some ways, like we'd never been to Ecuador. We'd never been to Cuenca. We didn't know anybody. And that's sort of our adventure. We like that. We like to have to figure out a place and talk to people. And so we landed in Cuenca, Ecuador, which is a small city of 500,000 people up in like 8,000 feet in the Andes Mountains and right near the equator in South America. And so like, it was just the weather was beautiful, green mountains. It was 50 to 70 degrees year round, and just wonderful people. And our kids went to a local school. And so they had about 10 or 20 words of Spanish when we got there. We just sort of threw them in the deep end, and they were amazing. And learned after 5 or 6 months, they were coming up to me, who had a little bit of head start on them, and they were saying, "Papa, no se dice eso." They were like wagging their finger at me, correcting my Spanish. And I was like, I love being corrected. This is great, So I mean, it was incredible. And so, not everybody wants to travel. I think a lot of people do, but for us, it was like this is why you do it. This is being able to go abroad, to spend time with family. I'm kind of an A-type go-getter, entrepreneur. And so I need to unplug, and I need to get a little bit of that Latin American, like, hey, take it easy, man. Take it easy, gringo. You gotta chill out a little bit, take a siesta. And so all of that was really good for me too, just take a chill pill and enjoy life a little bit and enjoy your family, enjoy those small, like little details that we tend to kind of look over, or I do at least, when you're busy. And to me, that's kind of my main message in the book. I don't know if you see that thing in the background, do what matters. And for me, like, that's what matters. Being with your family, having those little small times, exercising, being able to kind of reset a little bit and not have life and the rat race kind of running you, and you kind of turn it around on its head and say, you know what, we've kind of taken care of our money. We've got enough. We don't need to, we can take a time off from climbing and just live life a little bit. So that was our experience.
That's awesome.
I think that's kind of the name of the game. It's like, you know, you spent a long time really in grind mode, in hustle mode, in acquisition mode to get to the place where you can, quote unquote, throw a dart at the map and say, hey, honey, hey, kids, let's go. And I think that, you know, that's probably the biggest takeaway from the advice that you've given us today is that, you know, have a purpose for the hustle. You know what I mean? Have a purpose for the process. You know, it's one thing to say, I want to be a real estate investor because I want to have a certain net worth, or I want to have a certain amount of properties with my name attached to it because you can't make more land. But to have this as a goal because you want freedom. I think that's the ultimate goal. You have the freedom to dictate the moves that not only you make, but that your wife and your children can make. You positioned your family in a place to where money and the ills of not having it are gone. Right. And I want, you know, people that are listening to know that you can do it too. Mm-hmm. You know, if you look at where Chad started, he was a kid fresh out of college, living in an apartment with a friend, and just you fast forward to where he is today. There was a lot of work in between. There were a lot of moves and a lot of, like you said, scars along the way too. But what's good about, you know, the age that we're living in, we can take Chad's story and we can learn the lessons and avoid some of the mistakes that he made, and we could achieve it maybe faster than you did. And so I think that that's important to hear, that you got to freedom and we can get to freedom too.
Absolutely. You said it better than I could ever say it myself. I love it.
Now, one question I do have, though, because we do have a lot of couples that listen to the show, and in anything financial, it's not always both of you get it at the same time or both of you feel the same way about it at the same time. What if one spouse is listening and like, yes, that's what we need to do. We need to build wealth through real estate. And they go tell their spouse and they're like, nah, I'm not feeling that because real estate is too risky. Look at what happened in 2008. And how did you personally, because I know that at the beginning, your wife wasn't gung-ho about real estate as you were. She's more into it now, but you had to win her over. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, well, actually, I showed up for one of our first dates in a car that had "We Buy Houses" on the side of the car. And I asked her, I said, man, this is like my test right here. If she gets in the car and doesn't say anything and like still goes on a date with me, like I might have a chance. And so she got in and like she didn't say anything. I thought she was going to say something. And like later on, like the second date or something, I said, what'd you think about that car? Like it was just like my old Toyota Camry from high school that I got "We Buy Houses" written on it. And she's like, oh, I didn't think that was your car. I thought that was a company car. You were just driving for somebody else. I said, all right, that's good. But you know, our particular, like it's been a process as a couple as well. And I was actually starting real estate before we started dating. And so I kind of had my path a little bit. But when we first got married, you know, this is some of the messages I've really learned from y'all as well. Is like just that communication about between a couple and my wife told me that she saw all this stuff I was doing, and we got married in 2007, right when everything was kind of getting ugly a little bit, and we're having to like button down the hatches, and it was kind of scary. And she told me after we got married, she had dreams of like me just running away and leaving her with all this debt, and like it's all on her, it's all on you, baby. It's just on you. You gotta run with it. I was like, wow, okay, she's got some fears going on here, and so it's actually been really good. Like she didn't start off as a real estate investor, but she's learned a lot. She went to some, and I sort of worked into it slowly. I let her go to some of the classes I went to. I was teaching some classes, and some of them I was a student, and just let her hear other people talk about it. But I think more than anything, for the people who have another partner who's like, no, I'm not getting into real estate. Like you've got to earn the trust of your partner. Like you can't just like tell them about it. Like you've got to demonstrate. Your partner probably has some kind of intuition. Like my wife had an intuition and she was right, that we were being a little too aggressive. And she didn't know all about all the sophisticated stuff I knew in real estate, but she did know, like she had a gut feeling that we were being too aggressive. And so from then on, like I have a rule, like every time I do a deal, if I can't explain it to her and like within 60 seconds, it makes sense or it doesn't make sense, like she gets it or she doesn't get it, or then we don't do it. I mean, even if it's some big thing that seems a lot of opportunities, like we trust each other in that sort of communication. And it's also, we've also bought some properties together since then. And so we've kind of taken that and learned together and kind of joined forces. And so it's been a total partnership, particularly with the financial independence part, where we do our personal budget together. She usually kind of heads that up, and we had to look at the numbers together and say, here's how much we're spending and here's how much we need to cover. And so like, I don't think it would have worked if we hadn't had that communication, which y'all talk so much about, and sort of gotten on the same page and gone through that process, over time.
And I heard you mention the word partnership. So let's talk about that. Talon and I, we've been married for 12 years, got married in 2006, and we've had some business ventures where we got involved with other people, and it just didn't work out. We were just like, look, if they're not in these same four walls, we want no part of it, because it just seems so complicated trying to get the other person to agree, and both parties have to, sit down, I mean, how is that? Far as I know that you said that you have a partnership with your partner, and you guys both own this 90 units
empire.
Yeah, empire. Yeah. So talk about that, the fears or the challenges that may come, along with partnership, but also the good that comes with having a partner that's not necessarily your spouse.
Yeah, partnerships are tough. I think like there's a lot of them that don't work out, but it was the best thing I ever did having my business partner. Like, so Carrie is my wife is my main partner. We're business partners in terms of all our finances. And then my business partner in real estate, we've been working together for 16 years. But the thing, I think we lucked into some stuff that maybe we didn't realize when we first started, but maybe we had some intuition about it. But we both had the same kind of, I would say he's got a really good character. I trust him. He's not, I knew him as a person before I got into business with him. Like I could see how he ran his life and how he did things and what the little things were like. And so I just didn't have any concerns about his character. And hopefully he had the same thoughts about me. But then the other thing that knocks off some partnerships is we had common goals. And so we had to continue to communicate about that, a lot like a married couple, like partnerships are like marriage without all the good stuff, So it's like, you're basically in this thing, and it can be ugly if you ever have to split it up. And so we had some good communication along the way, where like sometimes where he would say, hey, I think we're doing too much. We need to settle down, or I think we should go this direction. And we would have these discussions both in the very beginning and then along the way. And a lot of the discussions were about our vision, like, all right, where do we want to end up? Because if I had wanted to go travel abroad and do these and have these kind of goals, and he had wanted to go build this like syndicated empire where you have like 500 units and raise a bunch of money from, big money partners. And, that's a potential way to do it. And we could have done that. But if we had different goals, I don't think it would have worked out. We had to have those conversations about here's where we're trying to go with the business. And then we have a common character, hopefully, and we treat each other right. And then you can figure out all the details of the business. That's where most people start. They start on like, all right, you do this, I do that. And I think that's a little bit backwards. You got to start with the person. Do I want to do business with this person long run? Like, is this, he was in my wedding. He was one of my groomsmen, when I got married. It's that kind of thing. And I treat my business like that. I've had people who bought house, one of the people who sold a house to me, like one of my first houses, they were a Methodist ministers, like the couple was. And I just loved them. They're a sweet couple. They retired. They ended up being the ministers in our wedding for me and my wife. Like that's how you have partnerships or relationships with people in business who can be like, your friends, you're good. And so that's the way I treated my partnership. And I think that it paid off having that kind of person first and then worry about the business next.
Great advice.
Yes.
So tell everybody about your new book that's in stores right now. Tell them where to find it and how to stay in touch with you.
Right. So the book's called Retire Early with Real Estate. And this is basically a strategy guide. So like if you said, all right, real estate's interesting, I like this thing, but like I don't even know where to start. basically I take you on a journey up the mountain. And so like step by step, I said, all right, here's where you want to go. Let's kind of work it backwards from the peak of the mountain. And we go backwards and backwards. And I help you figure out what's the right route up the mountain for you. And the thing I really had the most fun of with this book was getting to interview 24 other early retirees. Some people like, Paula Pant, who's also a real estate blogger, other people who nobody knows. They're just people who I randomly bumped into who have these incredible stories, and they share their numbers and they share how they did it. And the wonderful thing is they're all different. Like I didn't want to just tell my story. I wanted to tell Lisa Phillips, who was in Baltimore and Virginia, and I wanted to tell Paula Pant's story. And so like when you get the book, you're gonna get strategy, practical stuff, and then you're gonna get stories and examples. And with the end goal, like I would be super happy if people read this book and they walk away confident that they have a plan. Like, all right, they say, all right, here we go. I got some work to do, but Chad's given me kind of a blueprint, a plan. I'm going to run with this thing. And then you can go back and you can get it off the shelf after you make a little progress and go back to the plan and adjust and adapt. And so that's my book. And you can find it. It's on biggerpockets.com/retire early. And by the time you get this in September, it'll be out there. You can also find it on Amazon if you want to buy it on Amazon. So trying to get the word out and let everybody know about it.
Awesome. We'll be sure to have links in the show notes of this episode, and tell everybody about where you write. Get some insight from your awesome blog and your social media.
Thank you. Yeah, my home on the internet is coachcarson.com. So you see my T-shirt there, Coach Carson. And so I write about real estate primarily and a lot of practical strategies similar to the book. But every week I kind of unpack new stuff and I interview people. And I'm pretty active on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. So all three of those, if you just look up Coach Carson, I'll be there.
Awesome. This has been super insightful and helpful. And we really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to share all this great information with our audience today.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Yeah, my pleasure. It's great to be with y'all. Thank you.